I'd much rather be a big fish in a small pond and dominate the market.
If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
The only thing I knew to do, Eugene, to get funding for my deals was go to the local bank, get on my hands and knees, put my hands underneath my chin and say, please fund my deal, and raise my skirt up so they could look at all my personal assets and give me a colonoscopy and pull my credit. The worst time to be raising private money is when you need it for a deal. We never take any of our own money to the closing table. And the skin in the game, by the way, is the equity that's already built. Now, if you don't remember who the Zenith television dealer was in your town, that means you're too young to remember life before Walmart came to town. One, I make the rules. I'm the underwriter.
But you don't ask for money directly. Nobody wants to be begged for money. You ask them for help, for advice, for referrals. And welcome to another episode of Real Estate Development Land to Legacy. Today we're talking to Jay Conner, who is going to teach us how to raise funds for our real estate projects. Welcome, Jay.
Eugene, thank you so much for inviting me to come along and join your party and to talk about my most favorite topic that I'm so passionate about. That's private money.
So this is a very common topic. We frequently talk to developers who call us and say, we've got this amazing project and we are struggling raising funds for it. So where does one start?
Well, that's a good question. I started investing in single-family houses here in Eastern North Carolina all the way back in 2003. And the only thing I knew to do, Eugene, to get funding for my deals was go to the local bank, get on my hands and knees, put my hands underneath my chin and say, please fund my deal, and raise my skirt up so they could look at all my personal assets and give me a colonoscopy and pull my credit and hope and pray. Well, that worked okay. I had great credit. And this was back in the day when you could get unsecured lines of credit back then. Well, that worked okay from 2003 until 2009. And then in January 2009, for goodness sakes, I was sitting here at my desk. I had 2 properties under contract to buy. And I called up my banker. His name was Steve. And I told him about the project. Steve and I had this conversation many times. And I learned like that over the phone that the bank had closed my line of credit with no notice to me whatsoever. And I said, Steve, what in the world are you saying? You closed my line of credit. We've had a great relationship, never late on payments. My credit score is still great. I said, why are you telling me you've closed my line of credit? And Steve said, Jay, don't you know there's a global financial crisis going on right now? So I hung up the phone, Eugene, and I want to share this, that I asked myself a question I ever asked myself and that anybody could ask themselves, and it will help fix any problem anybody's got. I don't care if it's financial, relationships, health, it doesn't matter. Here's the question I asked myself. I said, Jay, who do you know that can help fix your problem? Well, immediately, when I asked myself that question, who do I know? I immediately thought of Jeff Blankenship, who lived in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time, good friend of mine and my wife, Carol Joy. He was investing in real estate. I called him up. I told him what had just happened. The bank had cut me off. He said, Jay, well, welcome to the club. I said, what club is that? He said, the club of having the bank shut you down. My bank shut me down last week. I said, well, Jeff, how are you going to fund your real estate deals? He said, well, have you ever heard of private money? I said, no. He says, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs and how individuals can use retirement funds that they've got to loan out to real estate investors and earn high rates of return safely and securely, either tax deferred or tax free? I said, you're talking a whole different world, Jeff, I ain't never heard about. So I hung up the phone, and Eugene, I studied private money. And so what did I do? I didn't run around town selling, begging, trying to persuade or talk anybody into loaning me money. What I did, I raised over $2 million in less than 90 days. I've raised now $8.5 million that I just keep using over and over again on our real estate deals. What I did, I decided I didn't want to chase anybody. I wanted to do this, and here it is. I put on my teacher hat. Which private money teacher. And so I put my program together as to what I was going to offer. You see, instead of asking for a mortgage, we're offering a mortgage or offering a way for people to high rates of return safely and securely. So I put together, without associating with any deal, I put together, okay, here's the interest rate I'm going to pay. Here's how I'm going to put this program together. And I went about started teaching people what the program is without having a deal associated with it. Desperation's got a smell to it. The worst time to be raising private money is when you need it for a deal, right? So I'd have people just pledge like my program. They said, Jay, I got 200,000 I'd love to start with. I got 250,000. One guy started, I got 650,000 I'd like to start with. And then I come back to them and offer to put their money to work. So I've never pitched a deal. So first, see, here's the secret. You separate the conversations of having a private money program for people to loan you money and then coming back for a deal for them to fund. So I've never pitched a deal. When I've got a deal for them to fund, I simply call them up with the good news phone call, Eugene, and here's the script. And I'm going to turn it back to you. Here's the script. I call them up and I say, I've got great news. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house in Newport under contract with an after repaired value of $200,000. The funding required for the deal is $150,000. I know they got it. They already told me. Closing's next Friday. You need to wire your funds to my real estate attorney by next Thursday. And I'm going to have my real estate attorney email you the wiring instructions. That's the end of the conversation. The most stupid thing I could do is ask them, do you want to fund the deal? Of course they want to fund the deal. I already taught them what the underwriting criteria is, and particularly if they have moved their retirement funds over to a self-directed IRA company at my recommendation, they're not making any money until I put their money to work. So I'm ethically bound to put their money to work and get their money invested. So again, it's all about leading with a servant's heart, having your teacher hat on, teaching people what this word is all about. You know what's interesting, Eugene? I got 47 private lenders, and not one of them had ever heard of private money or private lending until I told them about it. And not one of them had ever heard of self-directed IRAs and how you can use retirement funds to be a private lender. Over half of my private lenders are using retirement funds. So it's all about teaching.
So the message here is educate your ahead of time. So when you actually need the money, you could just give them a call and they're already ready to invest. So if I am working on a new project, happen to be in real estate development, and I am halfway through, we're getting the building designed, we're working through the permits, and I'm getting ready to go to the bank because that's where I think my money's at for me to build the building. But the bank is telling me that I need to add, $500,000 or a couple $1 million, depending on the project size, of additional equity. And now I'm stuck because I haven't done the work that you're teaching to do ahead of time, and I need to go back and start from the beginning. How long does it take to build this momentum to have these people waiting and eager to invest with you?
Less than 90 days. But that also depends on how much money you're looking to raise, right? So I've raised a lot of private money for single family houses. I've got a lot of friends that in the commercial world, see, everything that I do with single family houses is what's called one-offs. So we're not even regulated by the SEC in this world of single family houses. You have a single family house, and then you have a private lender, an individual, or maybe a couple of private lenders that are now funding that deal. They each have their own promissory note. They each have their own mortgage or deed of trust, as it is here in North Carolina. In the world of commercial, what you will want to do is what we call syndication. And of course, Eugene, you know all about that. That's where you hire the SEC attorney. They prepare a private placement memorandum. And now you're going to raise money for your fund. And then it's that fund that's going to take care of the gap in between what your primary commercial lender will loan and the rest for the cost of build or build out or et cetera. That's also a very popular strategy in multifamily. So if you're doing multifamily, very common to have a syndication and raise money either for the entire project. You can have a fund for people to invest in, to purchase and then add value, do a value add. And those are typically a 3-year to 5-year turnaround on that. In this world of single family houses, the turnaround is typically within 12 months on rehabbing single family houses. So, it's just a matter of what kind of appetite that individuals have, how comfortable are they having their money either tied up for 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, etc. Private money puts you in the driver's seat, whether you're doing new development, um, you're investing in a current project that you want to do a value add, single family houses. And again, depending on how much, I've got a lot of students that come to me to learn how to raise private money. And all the time they'll get $500,000 and more. Commercial development, you're going to need more than $500,000. So give yourself 90 days.
Excellent. So 90 days to raise the funds. Typically, when people think about fundraising, the first thing that comes to mind is, I got to open my phone book and call everybody on my phone book that I think has money and pitch them this deal. Is that the way to go, or is there a better approach?
Well, there's the direct method and there's the indirect method, right? So we'll talk about the direct method for a second, but I much prefer the indirect method of starting a conversation. So here's what I'm talking about. The direct method of a conversation of attracting money employs what I call the magic question. And the magic question is, quote unquote, do you have investment capital and or retirement funds not giving you a high rate of return safely and securely? And that's the direct method. Obviously, you're not going to start out a conversation like that. That's going to be like a by the way. You're having a conversation already. So here's how the indirect method works of attracting money without asking for money. I'll share it to you in a short story. So when the bank cut me off back in 2009, as I said, one of the first things I did was I put my program together, my private lending program that I was going to offer to individuals. Regardless of the property, it's all the same interest rates, same length of the note, same loan to value. By the way, we borrow money based on the after repaired value. That's why we always bring home a big check when we buy. We never take any of our own money to the closing table. And the skin in the game, by the way, is the equity that's already built into the property. So I put my program together, and then I was going to Bible study on a Wednesday night here in Morehead City at the Church of Christ on Barber Road. And I walked into the foyer, and I knew I wanted to talk with Wayne. Now, Wayne and I had known each other for a number of years. I walked up to Wayne. I said, Wayne, I'd like to talk with you about something confidential. He said, sure. So everything's finished. We went down to the nursery, shut the door. Here's exactly what I said to Wayne. Exactly. I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. And he did. He was the original. Now, Eugene, you're not going to be old enough to remember what I'm getting ready to say, but Wayne was the original Zenith television dealer here in Morehead City, North Carolina. Now, if you don't remember who the Zenith television dealer was in your town, that means you're too young to remember life before Walmart came to town. The Zenith television dealer, that's who you got your TVs from. They financed them. They actually repaired TVs back then before you just throw them out and buy a new one. So anyway, Wayne was the Zenith television dealer, and he was retired. I said, well, and that's why he knew everybody in town. He put a television in everybody's house, right? And I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. And he was very, very well connected to the Rotary Club and all that. I need your help. There's the magic phrase for the indirect method. I said, Wayne, I need your help. I said, you see, I've now opened up my real estate investing business by referral only and by word of mouth to people that I know and trust. And when you run across somebody that is complaining about losing money in the stock market and the volatility of the stock market and making hardly no money in the certificate of deposit at the local bank, would you refer them to me and I'll tell them about how I'm paying my investors now insane high rates of return. Wayne paused there for a second. He says, well, now, Brother Jay, what you got going on there? And I said, well, Wayne, are you saying that you might be interested? He said, yeah, I might be interested. I said, well, why is that? He says, well, we're losing money in the stock market and we're only making 3% at the local bank. And that's after 2 cups of coffee and a conversation. That 250,000 became 500,000 that next afternoon at their house. So let's take a second and analyze and unpack that story. Notice I didn't ask him for any money. I asked him to just spread the word that I'm now paying very, very high rates of return to my investors in my real estate deals, and just pass the word on. He asked about details. I told him. Now they're signed up, and I didn't say anything about any deals. They became quickly $500,000 private lender, and then they did exactly what I asked them to do. They spread the word. I lost count on how many private lenders came to me just on word of mouth of Wayne and his wife spreading the word. So it's called leveraging your relationships. And I mean, people want to help out. And so all I did was ask him to spread the word. They came right on as a private lender and they spread the word. That's how you start. Well, that's not really how you start. How you start is you need to know what you're going to offer, right? You need to know, what are you going to offer your private lenders or your investors? And here's a spoiler alert. Before Eugene ends the show and thanks me for coming on, I got a way that you can learn very quickly what the program is that I offer my lenders.
Okay, you got to tell us about the program.
Well, let me go ahead and give your audience an invitation, Eugene, and then I'll talk about the program. So I just recently finished recording my brand new private money challenge. So it's a seven videos, only 15 to 20 minutes long each one. Gives you the basics of private money. And you can enroll, if you're listening to this show, you can enroll at www.privatemoneychallenge.com. Again, that's www.privatemoneychallenge.com. You'll immediately get the first video in your email inbox. And then the next 6 days, you'll get the next video at 9 a.m. Eastern. But here's the gist of the program. The percentage rate, I pay 8% or I pay 10%. That's 8% in first position, 10% in second position. I've been paying the same thing, Eugene, since February 2009. That's the same thing I pay today. And you know, something interesting that people will say to me, they say, Jay, in this market of what interest rates have done the past year and a half, how in the world are you still paying your private lenders the same thing that you were in 2009? I said, well, there's 2 big reasons. Number one, I make the rules. I'm the underwriter. Not the lender. I'm the underwriter. I make the rules. Here's what's offered. Second reason is 8% is still a whole lot more money than 4% or 4.5% at the local bank. And the third reason, really, there's so much more money out here than there are deals. There's so much more money available just sitting on the sidelines. So anyway, 8%, 10% in second position. My maximum loan to value is 75% of the after repaired value, not 75% of purchase price, but 75% of the after repaired value. The length of the note is typically 2 years. I'm typically not going to use the money for 2 years, but that's what we set the note up as. And then I protect my private lenders in multiple ways. This is what I teach them with my teacher hat on. So I'm not going to borrow unsecured money. I'm going to collateralize that promissory note with the real estate. I'm going to name them on the insurance policy as the mortgagee. That way, if there's ever a claim against that insurance policy, the insurance company is going to make the check payable to the mortgagee and to my company. So they got to sign off on that check. I'm going to name them on the title policy as an additional insured in case there's any title issues down the road. I'm going to give them a 90-day call option, right? A 90-day call option, which means if they've got an emergency and they need their money back early, just let me know and I'll replace their private money with another one of our private lenders' money. So it's very easy. I don't charge them any kind of penalty if they call the note due early. Most programs, like putting money in a CD at the local bank, are going to charge a penalty. I've only had 2 small notes called due early, and it's because they had medical issues going on and they needed the money for the medical. So anyway, that's
Awesome. That sounds great. But you don't ask for money directly. Nobody wants to be begged for money. You ask them for help, for advice, for referrals, essentially, and introduce the product and hope that they become interested. How do you scale this? I can see that working if you need to raise a couple 100,000. If you need to scale that up to, couple million, 2 million, 3 million, 10 million, does the same model work?
Yeah, I've scaled mine to 8.5 million. And I don't raise any more private money because I just keep using the same money over and over again to, projects. I raised 2.5 million in 90 days, right? So this model works if you're not in a rush. A lot of times I've introduced the concept to an individual, it might be 2 years before they have retirement funds coming available. This entire 8.5 million probably didn't over 2 to 3 years kind of thing. But I'm still only doing 2 to 3 deals a month, single family houses. Our average profits are $82,000 per deal. So really, how much do you need to raise? You don't need 47 private lenders, right? You only need like a couple to get started. I'm in a very, very small market, Eugene. Our total target market's only 40,000 people here in Eastern North Carolina, which does make a point. I'd much rather be a big fish in a small pond and dominate the market. And instead of competing with all those other real estate investors in like large populated areas.
Interesting. But the key is still to find a handful of influencers, right, that could potentially refer you to their group of peers.
I raised almost $1 million at one 60-minute luncheon. What did I do? I invited about 20 influencers from our town here, and I had my CPA and my realtor and my real estate attorney at the luncheon. Had it at the Dunes Club, Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, the nicest place around here that I could have it. And I bought them lunch, and I took 20 minutes. I put on my teacher hat, and I taught the program without pitching a deal. It takes the same amount of time to teach what you're offering to 20 people as it does one person. So I just leveraged the time, and just at that one private lender luncheon, almost $1 million. How else can you get the word out? I have a PowerPoint presentation that myself and my mastermind members, I run a mastermind group for real estate investors wanting to raise money. This PowerPoint presentation is what I call the Civic group presentation. So it's a teaching presentation. It does not teach private money, but it plants the seed at the end of it. Essentially, here's what the presentation teaches: how you can put $100 in a self-directed IRA company, $100. You can go find a real estate deal, a single family house, and get an option on it, assignment fee of $10,000 or $20,000. And that's in your Roth IRA at a self-directed IRA company. You just made $10,000 or $20,000 tax-free in your Roth IRA. Well, that blows their mind. I mean, these sophisticated, smart business people at the Rotary Club, they never heard of this strategy and what self-directed IRAs are. But then at the end of the presentation, we say, and by the way, if you don't want to find deals, if you don't want to negotiate deals, and you just want to be a passive real estate investor with your retirement funds, then here's this world of private lending, how you can just sit back, collect checks, and do nothing and earn super high rates of return. I've got an audio, and then we put up the QR code on the PowerPoint. Here's a QR code. Listen to this 16-minute audio, and it will introduce you to this world of private money lending. So that presentation in 20 minutes is a lead generator for potential private lenders that have never heard about this.
Wonderful. That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the self-directed IRA business. I've heard about it. I know that a lot of people are doing this, but can you explain a little more?
Sure.
It sounds like a wonderful hack to make some money and not pay taxes, right?
Oh, yes. So Self-directed IRAs, so there's a handful of self-directed IRA companies in the nation. They are IRS approved. They are also called a third-party custodian. And so just simply, go to Google and, you want to find one near you if you can, but just Google self-directed IRAs. Well, here's the way it works. An individual can take a current retirement account, such as it could be in Schwab, it could be in Morgan Stanley, it could be in the big stockbrokers, it could be in a 401k company, and they establish their account. Now, the private lender, the individual that's moved that money over, they can now lend that money out on real estate. And interestingly enough, over 70% of account holders in self-directed IRA companies want to lend money out to real estate investors. That's a great place to network, right? Find self-directed IRA companies that are having networking events going on, and there's a bunch of private lenders. However, that's a negotiation conversation because those people already know about this world. I'd rather have on my teacher hat, teach people that's never heard of this, tell them my program, then they move their current retirement funds over. So depending on the type of account they've got, if they got like a 401k that they moved over, then the money they're going to earn is tax deferred until it's distributed. However, if they have a Roth IRA, that IRA is established with after-tax funds. So they've got a Roth IRA, all the returns that they earn are tax-free. So it's an amazing strategy. I highly recommend you research it. It's all about self-directed IRAs.
Excellent. That's wonderful advice. Very useful. And definitely everybody who's interested in passive real estate investing, self-directed IRAs, a path to investigate. There are a lot of rules about it that cannot be ignored. It could be regulated. It could be, you could be audited if you don't do things right, but definitely a wonderful way to invest in real estate and avoid future taxes.
Exactly.
Jay Conner, thank you very much for joining us. Very useful information. Once again, why don't you share your contact information and we'll put that in show notes.
Absolutely. So enroll in the Private Money Challenge at www.privatemoneychallenge.com. Also, come check out my podcast. I'm in my 8th year of podcasting. The name of my show is, believe it or not, Raising Private Money with Jay Conner. It's on all the platforms. And I'm an ER, by the way, CONNER. So come check out. You can reach me. We actually pick up the phone when you call our office. Isn't that a novel idea? But you can find me at jayconner.com, www.jayconner.com. I love to talk money with anybody.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jayconner.com/moneyguide. That's jayconner.com/moneyguide and download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jayconner.com/moneyguide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.